going to now start our notes on the second part of Chapter 2. We've been talking about properties, and we're going to talk about another property today. What is the meaning of the word distribute? Who knows what the word distribute means? Yes? To pass out. Good. So we're going to be able to use that term distribute in math, and we're going to use it with math problems. All right, so we're going to use the distributive property. That's our next property that we're going to talk about today. And distributive property, what I want you to know is you use the distributive property to your advantage. You use it to make difficult problems easier to manage. All right, so in our first example, we're going to talk about camping. You and a friend are going on a camping trip. You each buy a backpack that costs $90 and a sleeping bag that costs $60. What is the total cost of the camping equipment? Well, in this first example, there are two methods that we can use to determine the cost. Method 1, you can find the cost of one backpack and one sleeping bag, then multiply the result by 2, the number of each item bought. So you have your total cost, and it's going to be equal to 2 times 90 plus 60. Then you simplify that. That would be 2 times 150, and the total cost is going to be $300. That's the first method, one method you could use to determine the answer. The second method is you can find the cost of 2 backpacks and the cost of 2 sleeping bags, then add the cost. So you can do 2 times 90 plus 2 times 60. Simplify that to be 180 plus 120. Your total cost is $300. You get the same answer with the 2 different methods. So in our terms, your vocabulary term is the distributive property. It is used to multiply a single term and 2 or more terms inside a set of parentheses. So an algebra example of it would be A times B plus C. A is being distributed to everything inside the parentheses. Another way you might see it written is B times A, C times A. You can also use the distributive property when you're subtracting. A times B minus A times C. And again, B times A minus C times A. You can use that with numbers. Again, the 4 is being distributed in each of these examples. The 5 is being distributed in each of these examples. When you use the distributive property, you distribute the number outside the parentheses to each number on the inside of the parentheses. So let's look at this example. R, 6 times 13, 6 times 10 plus 3, 6 times 10 plus 6 times 3. Are all those the same? No. Do you get the same answer with those? No. Okay, let's work it. Let's do 13 times 6. All right. What is 6 times 10?
60.
And then 6 times 3 is?
18.
Can you do 60 plus 18 in your head? What do you get?
70.
So those are all the same. Now we're going to use another example using the distributive property. Geodes. This is a picture of a geode. After touring a cave, you visit a gift shop and you buy 3 geodes. Each geode costs $5.95. Use the distributive property in middle math to find the total cost of the geodes. Now, multiplying 3 times $5.95 is difficult to do mentally. So you can use the distributive property to solve the problem mentally in your head. So the total cost, we need to find the total cost. You buy 3 of them. 3 times $5.95. In the parentheses here, 6 minus 500 is the same as $5.95. So we're going to distribute 3 to everything inside the parentheses. So 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 500 is 15 or 15 cents. $18 minus 15 cents is $17.85. So the distributive property can be used to simplify certain problem that you have got to work out. So now we're going to use the distributive property in your notes. You're going to use the distributive property to evaluate the expression. You need to show that you know how to use the distributive property. That is the purpose of this exercise. So in your notes, we'll do 3 times 8 plus 3 times 5. Simplify. Do each example and check the board when you're done. Let's move. We're going to now evaluate the expression using the distributive property. So you're not only going to evaluate it, but you're going to use the distributive property and mental math. So in our first example, you're going to try to make this problem easier by distributing the 4 to some integers that you can do in your head. So now we have the term equivalent expressions. They have the same value. These expressions are called equivalent numerical expressions. So the expression 3 times 2 plus 4 and 3 times 2 plus 3 times 4 are equivalent because they have the same value and their same value is 18. So they are called equivalent numerical expressions. So now, 2 variables that have the same value for all values of the variables are called equivalent variable expressions. You can use the distributive property to write equivalent variable expressions. So in this example 3, we are going to write equivalent variable expressions. These are expressions that contain variables in them. So in A, B, and C, we've been given an expression. We're going to write an equivalent variable expression. So in A, we're going to distribute 3 to everything in the parentheses. So this is your final answer, 3x plus 21. This is an equivalent variable expression. Now, you're going to notice in B, this is adding the opposite. So we're going to simplify that by subtracting 8. I am just not doing that very neatly. All right, now we're going to use the distributive property to write an equivalent variable expression. All right, now in example 4, you're going to be asked to find the area of geometric figures. Now you know how to find the area of a rectangle and square. So we're going to use that formula to determine A, and then I'm going to teach you a new formula to determine the area of a triangle. So as you have learned, the area, rectangle or square, is going to be the length times the width. So I'm just going to plug in what the length is. We're going to multiply it times the width. Now we're going to simplify this. 2x times 7 is 14x. 5 times 7 is 35. So your final answer for the area to this problem is the area is 14x plus 35 square units. Now we're going to use the formula to determine the area for a triangle. Area is equal to 1/2 base times height is your formula to use to determine the area of a triangle. So we're going to do 1/2 times the base, which is 12, times the height, which is 8 minus 3y. We're going to simplify this. 1/2 times 12 is 6, times 8 minus 3y. Use the distributive property. It's 48 minus 18y. The area is 48 minus 18y squared units. Now let's review our last page of notes. Use the distributive property to simplify these 4 variable expressions. this lesson, you were taught to use the distributive property to assist you into solving and simplifying expressions and equations. You can use a lot of them, you can use mental math to do that.